Immigration raids continue across the country with undocumented and documented migrants feeling the impact. The concerns extend to DACA recipients who've been granted protection from deportation under the DACA program. Joining us now is DACA recipient Reina Montoya, founder and CEO of Aliento. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you as well.
Define Aliento before we get too far in here.
Yeah, aliento translates into breath, but when you give aliento to someone, it's like giving words of encouragement. So that's what we do, give hope to our students.
Yes, and these are DACA students. This is who you focus on.
Yeah, DACA students and immigrant students are from immigrant families.
Okay, has your mission changed? Have you had to change what you're doing, how you're doing it since the start of the year?
Definitely how we do it. I think that right now there's a more heightened distrust with any institutions. Thankfully, we have had good trust with our community, but now people are more hesitant in being able to come forward and ask for help because they're afraid that the government is going to get a hold of that information.
Even coming forward to Aliento?
I think that people are really concerned about going to events in person, so we had to modify it and being able to reach and meet the community where they're at.
The president was supposed to focus on violent criminals. That's what we heard when this deportation and the ICE immigration programs first started. Is that happening?
That's not what I'm seeing in the ground. That's not what I'm seeing in the reports that are coming out of USCIS and detention. Right now, if that was the case, why are students across the nation who are high school students who couldn't qualify for the DACA program are getting detained at traffic violations? We have seen it in Utah, in New York, in Massachusetts, in California, in Georgia, and the list goes on. The other thing that recently happened just last week was that for years there were cases that were administratively closed by ICE, by judges, and they're being reopened and recalendar. Why are we going after those folks that they already determined that their case should be closed?
Your thoughts, again, there are arrests outside courtrooms, and we've talked about this in other avenues here. The case is dismissed, the people come out, they show up for the hearing, case dismissed, they come out, they're detained. What are your thoughts on this?
If we're having a conversation about not liking current immigration law, that's a separate conversation. Currently, like it or not, or despite of people's reactions on the immigration process, the truth of the matter is that these folks did everything right. The process of the U.S. government was to go to the CBP One app, file a claim. That's the process. People did it. They went through the legal channels, and they did it the right way, and they're still going and apprehending them at courts. That is so out of line.
Is that a new tactic?
That's something that we haven't seen in this scale. There were a couple of instances from what I've been doing my research and asking questions that happened under the Bush administration in very isolated parts. This is something that we haven't seen at this scale from what I've read up.
And we've seen this in courthouses here. As far as immigration raids, massive immigration raids, what are we seeing in Arizona? Are they few and far between? Are there any regularity to them? What are you seeing?
It is really hard to understand. ICE is not being as forthcoming about their apprehensions. We are seeing that Voter Star Homan has said that everybody who's here undocumented is a free for all. We are seeing more activity on ICE. I think it's really hard to pinpoint because right now they're not being dressed in the appropriate gear, and it's really hard and scary because what about if these are other folks that are not necessarily associated with a federal agency that are making these things? I think that crime is going to increase because of these inaccuracies in operations.
Well, and also, what do you think about the idea that drives people underground? We'd heard that about immigration enforcement in the past, it drives people away from society, away from the norms, away from calling police, away from law and order, court cases, the whole 9 yards. Do you see that happening here?
We don't have to imagine that. We've lived that through SB 1070. And more recently, I had a student who is born here, and she didn't want to go and say that someone hit her car because she was afraid that that could potentially expose her family members who don't have the right documentation.
And yet, Reina, those who agree with what the president's doing and those who think that this is a good thing, they call this an invasion. They say that the president himself said unauthorized immigrants are destroying schools, hospitals, and destroying communities. How do you respond to that?
I was one of those undocumented individuals who's a DACA recipient who has generated thousands and thousands of money and employed U.S. citizens who have been a teacher, who have impacted the lives of hundreds of students. That's not who we are. That's not what the data says. The majority of undocumented people have been paying taxes, have been doing the best that they can to get right with the law. The problem is that our immigration system is completely broken and it hasn't been reformed since 1986.
Is it harder to get immigrants now, as opposed to even last year or 5 years ago, to register with the government?
What do you mean by that?
Well, just the Trump administration wants to see more registration as far as people who are here, whether or not here legally or not. Is that something that you've heard about? Is that something that's happening out there? Is that just a speaking point? What?
I mean, I think that people are going to have more mistrust, even those folks that are following their legal pathways. Right now, we're seeing that ICE is outside of USCIS. For the regular folks that don't know that, that's typically the department that process all the legal migration. People are afraid of going there because they're like, what about if I get denied? Am I going to get detained?
Last question. What are you telling people that come to you for advice?
I am not an attorney. I'm telling them to please go see an attorney if money is a barrier. Talk to us so we can potentially pair you up with a couple of trusted attorneys. Is to not wait until the last minute. Right now, if something has changed in your life because you got married, because you have been a victim of a crime, this is the time to speak to an attorney and not to lose hope. There's a saying in Spanish that hope is the last thing that dies. So I do believe that in the goodness of American people, they want to process, and majority of them are good people when they get to understand how dysfunctional our system is, and hopefully we can get out of this soon.
Reina Montoya with Aliento, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Likewise.